story is such a vital part of our life. It indicates what our deeper values are, the perspective that we have in our story. It also details the larger energy with which we bring to our life and the intent that we have in exercising the energy to effectuate those values. I shared with you last Friday that there is a newsletter masterclass coming on Monday, tomorrow. And value, energy, intent are just a few of the things that are going to be discussed in Why I Don't Care If People Care That I Don't Care, the how and why of the necessity to put self first. Value essentially are our life philosophies, the preferences of perspective that we have. Energy is simply our capacity, our limitations, identifying where we're sourced and not sourced. And intent is the energy with which we utilize to capitalize off of those philosophies or values to effectuate or put into motion to drive our intent, our larger perspective that we have for life. Each one of those things build the story with which we're living. However, a lot of times when I'm talking with clients and even I'm living my own life, I have to remember to check in with myself to say, well, what's the energy that I have available to devote to this? And what is the energy that I need to support and bolster myself to effectuate carrying out my larger intent? And if I don't know what my intent is, how do I know that I'm honoring my values? How do I even know that I'm honoring myself? How do I even know that I am the center of my story and I'm honoring the larger perspective that I have for my life, what I want for my life, and where I'm engaging in places that are healthy or not for me? This has been something that I have been probably looking into most of my life, but consciously looking into actively for probably the past 3 years. And those past 3 years have not been easy. And a lot of time they have not been very fun, and I've been very sad. And a lot of that sadness I'm coming to realize now is, yes, the circumstances that I've been in, but far superseding the circumstances that I've been in, the thing that makes me the most sad is witnessing how I've treated myself. There's a movie that I love called The Holiday. And in The Holiday, one of the lead characters is Kate Winslet, and she meets this beautiful, quirky, talented, visionary older gentleman who points out to her that she is not the leading character of her life. She might not even be the best supporting character of her life. And it kind of ricochets her back into reflecting over her existence, into noticing that in fact is true. And it humbles her and it makes her sad. And she reverts back into old behaviors before she even recognizes what her value is and her worth is. And in the process of personal development for herself as well as with myself, like I said, there's some hiccups that occur along that path. And a lot of the hiccups that can occur often in reconciling with, do I even know what my intention is? A lot of times when I'm taking action. And if I don't know what my intention is with action, am I responsible for how I'm not only exercising my energy, but responsibly engaging kindly and consciously with other energies? And if I'm not conscious of my energy and my intent, then what are the larger values that are leading me forward in my everyday life? Better yet, what is it that I value in life that I'm trying to achieve? I think that in our world, there is this pendulum that constantly is occurring, and it makes complete and total sense because we're in a world that is progressive. It's changing every single second of every single day. But there is this story that we often cling to as people where we do this social caste system, which we've been indoctrinated to believe is necessary and appropriate to stay in your lane or know your place, that says you're only allowed to be audacious and bold and daring and forthright with how you view yourself and what you want for your life if you achieved a certain amount of success, if you have received a certain amount of validation and notoriety, if your net worth reflects X. In my life over the past few years, as I've been navigating this self-deprecating narrative that I've noticed I've been operating under, I also noticed that I've been operating from a disempowered ego. And that disempowered ego is pretty much largely responsible. It's largely responsible for allowing me to overlook understanding about what my values are. I don't even think I knew what the hell my values were up until about 3 years ago. I don't even think I even looked at the responsibility to consciously operate with intent. I was mostly just kind of doing shit to kind of follow the rules that were prescribed to me, be a good girl, whatever the fuck that means, which mostly entailed, letting everybody else shine except for me, and knowing my place and stay under the radar and use only certain words, and definitely don't use curse words, because smart, polite, generous girls do not have a caca mouth. But also using that disempowered ego to keep me at a distance from really understanding what my intent was, because the world at large, their prescription of what being a valuable, kind, conscious member of society looked like, whatever. And so I was trying to constantly live up to whatever that image was, speak how that image was, stand in audaciousness and understanding of who I am according to whatever certain prescription or narrative was playing in my mind. And so that disempowered ego really caused me to be really not responsible for who I was, and kind of expecting the world to be responsible to tell me what was appropriate, telling me what sort of intent would translate the best, what sort of expression or exertion of energy would be most appropriate and less disruptive to other people, and what values were going to be less likely to cause me to become a continual target and or make somebody else uncomfortable. I was taking responsibility for things and people and interpretations that I couldn't even predict, let alone allow myself to see. Allow myself to see that my fragile ego was preventing me from taking responsibility for my life, and for allowing me to understand that what my intent was specific to me. And what your intent is specific to you. And even if there is a disconnect between our intent, our energies, and our values, there doesn't have to be adversarial connections. There doesn't even need to be aggression. And that I had the capacity at any given time, if anybody misunderstood me, if I ever got something wrong, if I misspoke or I hurt someone, to know that I am the type of person that can stand up and say, shit, it's definitely not what I meant. Shit, that is not the energy that feels congruent for me. And shit, those are not even my values. I was wrong. I apologize. This is who I am. And if it won't be heard, I don't have to grovel and continue to beg for forgiveness for my humanity. If I say something, I mean it, and that's the end of it. There is no time continuum for which I need to beg for my place in this world. It was only me that was making me believe that that was true. It was my experiences, of course, the traumas that I have in my life, the wounding that I have in my life that was continuing to perpetuate me operating from a disempowered ego. It was that thing that I posted on Friday that I shared with you about, that every single time I had a vulnerability, my body went into freeze. Because I was so afraid. I was so afraid to be a human. Because probably like you, in my past, when I've been human, I've been hurt. I've been taken advantage of. And I forgot what it meant to remember that I'm not available to be taken advantage of, that I'm not available for bullying. And I am well equipped as an intellectual, a brave heart, a warrior of audacity and authenticity to stand up and speak my piece. But if I can't be heard by someone, I don't have to scream louder and longer and continuously in order to be gifted the right for my humanity. And so I think that when we come to the realization that we don't know what the fuck our values are, we're not really sure what type of energy brings us congruence, we're not even sure what our intent is, and if we've actually been operating from intent, it scares the fuck out of us. It scares us because we're afraid of what kind of person that makes us. And then we're doubly scared that if we flip the script on that and we stand up with visibility, tall, sturdy, vulnerable, as courageous, brave, and strong, and inspiring, that then we're going to be cast in another light as being defensive and proving and posturing. There's just so much projection going on. We're just in this really toxic cycle of projecting hurts. We're just trading them back and forth because we're afraid that if somebody else stands up too boldly in a contrasting opinion against ours, we don't even know how to poise ourselves because we have received much more dispute of our personality, some of us, in our lives than we have received praise, than we've received acknowledgement. And in those areas where we have received praise and acknowledgement, that may be where we are acting out of congruence, in ways that are incongruent for us, in ways that have ebbs and flows and are unpredictable and inconsistent, that when we behaved that way in the past, that was a no, 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 no. You need to be consistent so I can figure you out and so I can be comfortable with you. It's exhausting, but it's also honest. It's honest to admit where we have lost track of ourselves. It's honest to admit where there were moments in life where we felt so bolstered that we felt like nobody could bulldoze us. And then we weren't sure if that was a posturing or if it was honest. And so we pit ourselves against ourselves and we look out into the world seeking, well, if I talk like that, then maybe that will be acceptable. And if I behave like this, then maybe I'll be likable. And if I subscribe to this sort of thinking, then maybe I'll be valid. Maybe I'll get to be the right kind of human. So I want to leave you with this story. I have a niece. Her name is Ella. After my dad passed away, almost 2 years ago next February, I started to reflect and watch my niece a lot. She's exuberant. She's audacious. She is love personified. She's smart. She's sassy. She's quiet and she's introspective. And ever since she's been able to talk, she's been posturing the same phraseology. And the phraseology is this: I am Ella Bella Beautiful. And the first time I ever heard her say it, I was blown back. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I realized why I was blown back. It was because I saw my innocence in her. And it really touched me. Because a lot of people have different ways of being, and that's so beautiful and it's so interesting. And I remember asking her, what is it about being Ella Bella Beautiful that's so great? And she said, because I'm me. And it was so simple and so innocent. But here she was, probably about 6 or 5 at the time, telling me in complete confidence that just being who she was appropriate. She understood what her intent was, just to be her. She understood what her values were, continually more self-actualizing and letting people know that she wasn't available for anything else less than, I'm wonderful. And she understood that the energy with which she wanted to operate in was inconsistent according to her barometer of exercising energy. And so what I started to come back into myself after a few years of going through PTSD and trauma-based therapy and EMDR and getting diagnosed as autistic, having my dad suddenly pass away, both of my grandmothers on my side and on my husband's side, I felt like I was in the fucking dryer. I felt like I wanted to just give up. But for some reason, I forged ahead. And I did it in silence. And I felt ashamed of that. And I started to feel like maybe I was doing it in silence because I was afraid what you would think. If I really stood up and said, I fucking like me, and I just want to be me, because there's this like energy in our culture that's like you have to be audacious but humbly. Yet we look at superstars and celebrities like Rick Rubin, Harry Styles, Beyonce, Taylor Swift for their bigness and boldness, and we're like, yeah, bitch, I want that. Give me some more of that. Inspire me to be that. But then when we go into the world, we don't. We diffuse, we thwart, and we mute. My newsletter tomorrow is going to be talking about this exact thing. I'm looking for people in this world that want to stand out and be big and bold. And I want them to do it in a way that feels authentic for them. If you're ready to be this first person for yourself, then I invite you to invite yourself to emerge, to stand in the values that are true for you, the energy that thrives you, and the intent that makes you conscious of what you're doing as a mode of being not only responsible for how you engage values and energy with other people, but for what you want from your fucking life. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm tired of being quiet, and I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm tired of feeling like I have to talk a certain way and be diplomatic and use certain verbiage in order to feel valid, to be a resource for myself, to inspire others to be a resource for themselves. It's time to pull the curtain back, and it's time to understand why it's important to put yourself first. And all the other things that come behind why it's valid to do that, why it's healthy to do that, why it's safe to do that, that'll come. Just start focusing on putting you first.